We are live and direct. This is the Remix Morning Show. I have with me a good brother, an attorney here in the Atlanta area, Michael Harper. Michael Harper, how you doing this morning, brother?
Hey, I'm doing well. Doing well. Thank you for having me this morning.
Man, it's an honor to have you on this morning, man. I'm glad that you can make it on such short notice. I know you all are busy working on on a number of cases, but this case in particular is a case that it's not getting as much traction as I think it should, you know. And I think this case is a travesty and is an example of why this whole system has to be eradicated, has to be some changes. A lot of folks are talking about Cop City right now, and here's an example as to why there has to be some type of serious change. We're talking about the case of Lashawn Thompson. Lashawn Thompson, him and his family is one of your clients, and we understand that he was eaten by bed bugs alive inside of a jail cell. Please tell us about that.
Yeah, it is a horrible case. This is, in fact, the worst case of inmate neglect, I believe, in U.S. history. I've never seen a case, and I've filed many of these over my career, where an inmate Lashawn Thompson was arrested in June of 2022. They knew when he was arrested that he had some mental health issues. He was arrested on a misdemeanor, by the way. It was a misdemeanor charge, a battery charge, essentially. And he could not afford the bail, and they put him in a psychiatric ward wing of the jail and simply left him there and neglected him for 3 months. And during that time, his body wasted. He was dehydrated. He was malnourished. He suffered from what's called decompensated schizophrenia. And for those who were asking the question about why didn't he care for himself, why didn't he complain as his condition deteriorated, it's because he could not. He was mentally ill. He was unable to do so. And you have to remember, he was charged with the misdemeanor, not convicted. He was simply being held until he got his day in court. And for them to allow this man to waste away in that way, and once he reached that level of incapacity, that's when the bed bugs and the insects came in and simply destroyed his body. And he was found on the floor of that cell in the Fulton County Jail, dead with the insect infestation. It is unconscionable. It is horrendous that anyone in America would die in that way, being charged with a misdemeanor. Horrible case.
I'm confused, as I should be, and I'm sure our audience as well, right? So here it is: you have a man who is arrested on a misdemeanor, right? You have a man who's diagnosed schizophrenic, correct?
Right.
And he's placed in his cell for 3 months. He's allowed to be dehydrated. His body is beginning to deteriorate, and insects, the infestation. Um, they literally ate him alive. How does that work? I mean, when did this take place, and what has been the response?
Well, I mean, again, it took place. He was arrested in June of last year, June 12th, and he died on September 13th.
Right.
Uh, and we know from the medical records that he received no psychological meds for his schizophrenia for 40 days, in the last 40 days that he was there. Now, we do have the jail records where they saw that he was having some issues. They saw him declining. Both the jail medical staff and the detention officers, they put it in the records. We have it, the proof that they saw the decline. And they had a note in there, he needs to be seen by the medical observation unit. But they never took him. They never took him to the medical unit. And by the time, well, they never took him, and they found him dead in the cell. I mean, it really is unbelievable that they should have been monitoring him every 2 hours.
Right.
If you're in a mental health ward, you should be monitored every 2 hours. And this man was there for 3 months and declined to the point of death. I mean, it's just, it boggles the mind, to your point, and I'm sure everyone is confused as to how in the world can this happen uh, anywhere. Not to mention in the United States and in Atlanta of all places, right?
Right.
The
Right.
rights movement, and this is an abuse of power. I mean, the sheriff of the Fulton County Jail is African American.
Right.
The detention officers are largely African American, so it really is an abuse of power. And we all know that when we talk about the neglect of Black lives in this country, all of us as a society, it's a systemic problem, right? White, some whites see us as less than, as well as Blacks, because we're taught the inferiority of the Black race.
Right.
So
Right.
when we ask the question of how did Black people allow this to happen, we all must be careful about how we see each other, even as
Right.
Black, to allow this to happen, because it never should have happened. It is just egregious and really the worst case I've ever seen.
So they're, I mean, are they feeding him? I mean, you can't possibly be feeding him and giving him showers and things of that nature, and you not notice that it is an infestation. We saw the pictures of his body with, I mean, there's so many bites on it, you couldn't even see a part of his skin where there were no bite marks. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, what was their explanation? I mean, I'm hearing you saying they kept records, but I mean, has there been a response from the Fulton County Jail? I mean, has there been? I mean, first of all, with an infestation like that, I'm sure that it's more than one cell,
yes. The
right?
entire wing, we found out the entire psychological wing in the jail was infested with bed bugs and insects. Lashawn Thompson, as we know, was the only one who actually died from that condition.
That you
Uh,
knew of,
from the
right?
infection. Yeah, but yes, it was the entire wing. It wasn't just his cell. You know, that cell, and you saw the photos. I mean, it was filthy. There was trash and debris and dirt everywhere, feces. It was just a horrible, deplorable situation. Now, when he first died, the Fulton County medical examiner came back and listed his death as the cause of death as undetermined.
What?
Undetermined. Uh,
I mean, you
which,
can look at it and tell. It's not even like, I'm not a medical examiner,
that's
but
right.
you can look at his body and, I mean, what do you mean undetermined?
Well, I
What
mean,
it
look, you have to understand it's the Fulton County medical examiner, right? We're talking about the Fulton County Jail. And so, as much as you like to believe that people would be completely unbiased,
right.
uh, but I would argue that they are trying to protect the jail by saying that it was undetermined. And as you may or may not know, the new update in this case is Colin Kaepernick's nonprofit Know Your Rights agreed to fund an independent autopsy in this case.
Okay.
Well, they hired Dr. Roger Mitchell out of Howard University to perform an independent autopsy. And he actually found the cause of death, which was severe neglect.
Hmm.
Your point is pretty obvious as
Yeah,
to
I mean,
why.
you could have
But
hired me. I could have told you that. But yeah,
exactly.
like,
But let
yeah,
me just explain the actual mechanism of death. So when you have severe neglect and you have the untreated schizophrenia and you have the dehydration and you have the malnutrition, all of that caused an arrhythmia in his heart. And the heart just kind of beat out of control. And that's what the actual death was caused by, along with the insects all over his body. It was over 1,000 insect bites from head to toe, eyelids, everywhere in this man's body. I mean, it's so shocking that it really is hard to believe.
yeah. And this is a young man. We're not talking about an elder. What is he, like, 35 years old?
35 years old, absolutely 35 years old. If you see the pictures of when he was first brought to the jail and the pictures of when he died, he lost over, I think, 30 to 40 pounds over that period. And those pictures that you're showing now, I mean, that's how that picture of his face there, that's covered with those bed bugs and lice. That's him lying on the floor of the
Wow.
jail.
So this is how they found him.
That's how they found it.
Wow. This is this is a criminal act. Are there any charges being brought up? What is where are we right now with the
Well,
case? Because
it's exactly what we're pushing for right now. So thank you for highlighting that issue. We have provided all the information that we have in this case, all the jail records, the medical records, the private autopsy that we have to the U.S. Department of Justice. Senator John Ossoff in Georgia did ask for a full investigation. So the U.S. Department of Justice is investigating this case for civil rights criminal violations. And we also have the local district attorney, Fonnie Willis, looking into the local criminal negligence statutes in this case. And we're waiting to hear back from both of those entities.
so how can we assist our audience and folks around the world who are checking this program out? How can we assist, and what are some things, some suggestions that you would have for us to
I would have everyone that's concerned about this case, which we all should be. I mean, these are all jails. I mean, this is in Atlanta, but I mean, this can happen anywhere in the U.S. So you have to contact the district attorney's office, the Fulton County, and you can look them up. I mean, the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, contact them. Like, what are you guys doing? We need you to file these criminal charges of the people who are responsible. So contact the district attorney's office and also contact the U.S. Civil Rights Department in Atlanta about federal civil rights charges as well.
okay, and what steps have the Fulton County Jail taken? Is it business as usual? What's the situation?
To the credit of the sheriff, he has stood publicly. We've had several press conferences about this in Atlanta. In fact, we had one right in front of the jail. And to the sheriff's credit, he did come out with us and took responsibility as to what happened. He admitted the failures at the jail. The Fulton County Commission has agreed. They authorized $5 million, we've been told, to help clean up the jail. So there are some steps being taken. But the problem with that is it took these horrific photos to be
Right.
released to the world for that to happen. Lashawn Thompson died in September of last year. It took months for us to get this information. They knew, you saw those pictures, they found him that way in September. No one did.
You didn't have any access to those photos up until recently.
Absolutely right. The family
Wow.
reached out to the sheriff, his sister, and they reached out to the sheriff to find out when they got the body. Can you imagine that's your loved one? And you receive his body for burial in that condition? The funeral home was outraged as to what in the world happened to this man. So the family reached out to the jail. They got no response from the jail. The family got no response. They just said he was found unresponsive in his cell. And I've sued Fulton County for many, many years. That's how the family found me in other media reports. And I was able, it took me months, but I was able to finally get those photos, finally get the medical records, finally get the incident reports. And I was shocked when I saw them. And then I, along with the family, in our first press conference, we released those photos to the public. And that's when the international outrage then caused the sheriff to come forward and apologize. Why did he apologize in September?
Right. Right. And that's why when you said, and part of my English, but when you said uh you made a statement, you said that he came out and stood with you at the press conference. With all due respect, fuck the sheriff. And I say that because it's like you are in charge of that jail. You understand what I'm saying? So
Right.
to me, it's equivalent to saying, okay, boom, yeah, you know, uh, my family shot your family up. I knew it happened. I was there when it happened. I provided the bullets, but I'm sorry now that the world knows about it. You weren't sorry in September. You weren't sorry in October, November, December, January, and so on and so forth. But now when the press is there and it's hot, you want to protect your behind. And I think that it is criminal. And honestly, if there's a way to be brought up on charges, I think that he should be brought up on charges as well. You're in charge of his house. If in my home my children are running amok and they find a weapon or something and go kill the neighbor and they're underage, I'm responsible, right? So he should be held responsible just as much as everyone else. And part of my language, I know you like, man, I ain't no dude who's gonna go that way, but
No,
that's how I feel.
that's the type of frustration and outrage that's going to cause change. we need people to not treat this as business as usual and always use the polite language, to just and kind of move on. Because I always say in these cases, we need systemic change. I mean, I certainly appreciate the work that you do and bringing these cases to your audience and highlighting them from a very realistic perspective, to your point, and not just kind of sugarcoat it and move on to the next one. Because not only could this happen to someone else, but this family has to live with this.
Right.
This has to live. When we talk about these cases, these horrible cases of police neglect and how they treat a lot of Black people in this country, Black and white police, right? Like, again, it's a specific issue. Everyone sees it that way. When we talk about these issues, these families have to live, and we all move on, right? We all cover new stories and cover new cases and have new stories. But can you imagine that being your loved one? That's your brother, your son, right? That you see these horrible photos of how he died in that jail, being charged, not even convicted.
Right.
And you live with those images for the rest of your life. We have to be outraged. We have to be outraged and speak up.
And it was a misdemeanor charge on top of that.
Absolutely.
So I don't even understand why he was even being held. We're always talking about the overpopulation. At one point, I believe Keisha, the mayor, former mayor, was talking about closing the jails, and this is a prime reason. This is one of the reasons why it should have been closed. So to see this right here, and I agree with you when you talk about the family. It is it's so criminal, man. It's just like, it's saddening, it's disheartening. And I think that, for our audience out here, again, this is one of those stories that has to be at the forefront. Right now, Atlanta has a real black eye on it. With all the things going on from Cop City, from this situation here, the Jamarian Robinson case, is just so much back to back, and they've been getting away with it under the guise of blackness. As our comrade Deruba pointed out, here in Atlanta, the slaves run the plantation. You understand what I'm saying? And they are instructed and directed by white folks who don't care. So of course the sheriff's gonna run out when he see the camera and act like it's all good, and I'm down with you and the family, and we're gonna have an investigation. I'm confused as to how that is a building that you run and you don't know what's going on, particularly in the medical unit. That is the one place.
We had a meeting with him before that press conference. We met with him privately. The extended family and the legal team met with the sheriff, and we said just that. I mean, to him, we said it to his face. There is no way possible that this could have happened in your jail and you not know about it.
Yes.
When you walk in the jail, you know what I mean? I mean, that cell was filthy. There's just no way. I mean, and again, I mean, the reason I gave the sheriff some credit for coming out is because I fought these cases, like I said, for many, many years. Right. And they were just denied to the end. Right. The typical response is, we did nothing wrong, and never admit any liability. It's what you normally get. Right. Right. I mean, look, there's a political aspect to this. I guess this case is so egregious that he had to come out and apologize. So I agree with you there. But even that typically is not done.
Well, Attorney Harper, I appreciate you coming on. I will be out with you on some of the next pieces. Please keep me posted. I'm looking for justice in this case, because here it is. This is a man who couldn't fend for himself. So they took advantage of someone who was mentally ill, and they allowed him. This is a form of torture. I mean, when you talk about crimes against humanity and torture, this is real life torture that have to be eaten alive in a jail cell, in a filthy cell, as you're deteriorating, and nothing's done about it. So again, I thank you for taking on this fight, and we'll see you soon, brother.
Thank you for having me. Take care.